Alright, I'm gonna make a quick video here of all y'all saying that I'm not doing it with voltage and I need to prove my work and blah blah blah. I'm gonna bring up a few points here. Number one, my cells don't get hot. They stay cool to the touch. These little puny wires I have going into the cell stay cool to the touch. These little 1 amp diodes get warm, they do not blow up. So I'm clearly putting less than an amp through this cell presently. I physically see opposing voltage potentials across the cell. I have increasing voltage across the cell. Again, my amperage remains below 1 amp. Now, as previously stated, if I am making 1/3 of a liter per minute, that means I can multiply this system by 3. And with 3 amps of power, I can create, this is at the cell of course, 3 amps of power at the cells, I could make 1 liter per minute of HHO. That is far away from the 30 amps it would take to create 1 liter of HHO through traditional means. So yeah, if I essentially just had 3 of these exact setups right here, just 1, 2, 3, I'd be consuming a lot of wattage input-wise. However, at the cells, I would have 3 amps of consumed power, 1 amp per each set, and I would be producing 1 liter of HHO per minute. So what else do I need to tell you guys here to prove this? Like, I have high voltage at the cell. I have low amperage at the cell. My puny little diodes don't blow up. My puny little wires don't melt. My cells stay cool to the touch. And I can essentially create 1 liter of HHO per minute with just 3 amps at the cells. I don't know how else you guys want me to break this down to prove to you guys here what I'm doing, the process I am doing. Given I am still about half as efficient as traditional electrolysis input consumption wise at the cells where it really counts, where the function I'm trying to prove, I am getting the intended results. Now, you're saying, oh, I'm not dumping thousands of volts in here, blah, blah, blah. Well, essentially, I'm dumping hundreds to potentially thousands of volts in there. But what's being delivered is, 100 volts spanned across, several tubes. So we're talking like 5 volts per each individual concentric tube. But listen, EPP is not hydrogen fracturing technology. Now, once we take this to another tube, the gas in here, we can then probably achieve high voltage because there's going to be so much resistance because there's going to be a gas between the tubes rather than a conductive or non-conductive liquid such as water. And if you really want to get stupid with it, if I'm putting 6 amps in from the input, there's no way in hell I can have more than 6 amps going into here because I'm stepping up voltage. And when you step up voltage, you don't have as many available amps, obviously. So, even if this was the case, if you multiply 6 amps times 3, that's still 18 amps of power. There would be 18 amps of power to create 1 liter per minute, to where traditionally you'd be dumping 30 amps in to create 1 liter per minute. So, it's physically impossible for me to have more than 6 amps going to the cells, but clearly I have less than 1 amp, because if I had more than 1 amp going into the cells, these little puny diodes right here would be blowing up. They would be melting. These are the ones I'm using right now, 4007 fast recovery 1 amp diodes. You put 2 amps into these things, they're gonna blow. Okay? So, yeah, ask me again, what's performing the work here? Is it amperage? Is it voltage? Well, it's clearly not amperage, because we clearly have high voltage. We clearly have opposing electrical forces. We clearly have less than an amp input. We have 6 amps input to the system, but 1 amp input to the cells. So y'all literally can't be telling me that all I need to know what is performing the work here. I know it's performing the work clearly. Per Stan Meyer's documentation, per my readings, per my oscilloscope, per my actual input amperage consumption versus traditional electrolysis, at the cells, I do not have enough amperage to be creating 1/3 of a liter per minute. Period. Period. Guys, high voltage does not come into effect until you have the gas resonant chamber or the hydrogen fracturing technology. That is when you get into the kilovolt range. You do not need kilovolts for the EPP process. You just don't. It's in his documentations. I can maybe reference it. I've done videos on it. He shows the curve of voltage levels from 1 volt all the way up to 10 volts or so. I'm currently at level 6 at my maximum, and we see the gas production exponentially increase as a result of the voltage I'm putting into the cells. But listen, guys, I'm not a physicist. I'm not a mathematician. I'm not a transformer circuit dynamics expert. But what I am is a troubleshooter. What I am is a figure outer. I figure shit out. I've done it all my life in just about every aspect of every single thing since I was 12. Taking it apart, wanting to see how it works. Just so happens I stumbled onto Stan Meyer's works here, and I get to figure it out. Cool, I love doing that shit. I have been doing this shit for 15 years, and have made major advancements just in the last few years, really understanding the difference between the electrical polarization process, the hydrogen fracturing technology, and electron extraction and everything else. Everybody wants to put high voltage into their cells, not knowing what the actual tubes are doing, the voltage potential in the tubes. It's very, very clear. Equal opposite polarity pulses. We have a dipole molecule that is positive on one side and negative on the other, equally balanced. Now, if those are equally balanced, if we simultaneously put voltages on each side of it, equal opposite, that is going to effortlessly tear apart that molecule. We're not ripping off electrons. We're not creating any new molecules. We're not doing anything crazy. We are literally just pulling apart the molecule into its atom components, stabilized. Because when you pull it apart, we have a hydrogen, 1 proton, 1 electron. We have the oxygen, 8 protons, 8 electrons. It is a stable state with the electrical polarization process. You do not destabilize the atoms until you get into the hydrogen fracturing technology. And that is with subsequent resonant cavities that process the combustible gas, not the water. Now, with the spherical resonant cavity, which I'm going to have hopefully the pleasure of building here and experimenting with that, that's a little bit different scenario because you are doing laser injection to that, and supposedly with the functions of it, you are able to achieve a much higher voltage within that chamber than, let's say, a tube chamber. I believe these have a finite value of how much voltage you can push into them, whereas the spherical cavity could produce a lot more voltage because you could have maybe greater spacing in that vessel, where these are very small spacing. In the resonant chamber, the spherical one, you actually have a much larger gap throughout the entire shell of that thing. So there's a lot to be figured out there, but what I have here is my standard transformer with my custom wound inductors that balance the equation, more so just the positive rail inductor, and then just a handful of winds here for the negative inductor, because we already have that secondary bifilar acting as the negative inductor. And even my diode here in the VIC specifically is a 2 amp diode. So we are clearly not dumping enough amperage into these cells to be creating the amount of hydrogen we are creating. It is clearly on voltage. And if I can't explain that any clearer to you guys, then just don't bother to comment about, oh, well, blah, 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 and I need to know the calculations and all this shit. Keep it simple, stupid. I am applying the information that I've learned to the technology that I understand to create the functions that he states. Sorry, I'm getting amped up here. To create the gas on demand. It's that easy. It really, really is. It really, really is. Just one more final point here. If I am making 1/3 of a liter per minute, that means that traditional electrolysis, DC electrolysis, would require, let's just say, 10 amps of power to create that, okay? I'm not even consuming 10 amps input-wise from the wall outlet. 6 amps. There's no way I'm delivering more amps than my input because I have a step-up transformer. We're stepping up voltage, which means amperage is not as available. We have lower amperage. So there's no way I'm creating 1/3 of a liter per minute on 6 amps because you need probably 10 amps or more to do that. I'm not using amperage. I mean, that's it. That's pretty much all I can say, man. This is the setup here. Now, given, again, we need to find ways to reduce the amp consumption, the rate of electron flow through here. And as we are able to do that, perhaps with a spherical resonant cavity, perhaps with different transformers, windings, stainless steel wire, anything we can do for more resistance, we'll be able to get that down, that amperage down in the cell. So yeah, that's all the proof I need. And some of you probably aren't even going to believe me still. But yeah, my input power is 6 amps. And I've got 1 amp diodes on my cells. There's no way I'm pushing 6 amps through a 1 amp diode. Period. It's impossible. That being said, this is the electrical polarization process.
This is Stand Revenge.